My name is Jonathan Gallo. I'm the Director of Campus Ministry for the Long Island campus at St. Joseph's University.
I'm Sister Marie Mackey, Director of Campus Ministry on the Brooklyn campus of St. Joseph's University.
What inspired you to lead this year's Chicago service trip?
So our service trips were a huge component of the university's history. It was a long-standing tradition to do service mission trips through spring break and actually I think winter as well, and I think a few summers as well. So it was definitely a long-standing tradition, but COVID happened and obviously that changed a lot of what was going on. And after COVID, then the former campus minister, my predecessor, left. So that kind of left a few-year gap where like nothing was happening. So when I came a few years ago to the university, I was tasked to kind of bring about these spring break mission trips. So through a lot of different research, I must have talked to over 20 different organizations, worked with Sister Marie's predecessor as well, and just trying to kind of find some organization to work with to kind of help formulate one of these spring break trips. And we came across St. Christopher Journeys, which is based out of St. Louis, Missouri, ran by a gentleman named Dr. Michael Mayer. And his program was exactly what I was looking for. It was something that combined learning, it combined service, and it combined it through a Catholic social justice lens, but a lens that very much aligned with our university's values, our mission, and the tradition of the Sisters of St. Joseph. So it was really something, I guess I had to do, but it was something I really did want to do as well. It was something that I really hadn't had experience doing before in my previous job, so I was super excited to kind of put something together for the students here of the university.
Well, I came back on board as Director of Campus Ministry. Jonathan Gallo, Campus Minister on the Long Island campus, had already been doing extensive work on preparing a trip that both campuses would be engaged in. So I joined in. Jonathan certainly took the lead and did a great job, and the trip was planned for Chicago.
What were some of the most powerful or memorable moments you witnessed in this trip?
Well, believe it or not, probably the first powerful moment was watching the 8 students between both campuses engage with one another. They really had not met prior, except on a Zoom call. And so to see that unity between the two campuses and a willingness to share their stories with one another and be vulnerable with one another and enter into meaningful conversation. In the evenings, we did a sharing of the day. And again, that takes a certain amount of vulnerability and trust of others. And so I think that was a powerful moment just with regard to the participants of the trip. I think one of the many powerful things was being in the shrine of Mother Cabrini. As a New Yorker, we know all about Mother Cabrini, but I think we own her. And so to be in her shrine, the person who was with us was very passionate about Mother Cabrini, and also then to learn that she also has a shrine in Colorado. So Mother Cabrini certainly has made her way around the United States and just done tremendous good. But there were so many moments, so it's kind of hard to just pin it down to one.
So I think my first moment, and I think Sister Marie alluded to this as well, excuse me. The first thing I noticed was when we were at the airport actually, and to see all of you together, all of our students together, just being fast friends. That was a truly amazing experience because I was nervous. We had 2 very different communities from our Long Island campus and Brooklyn campus. And we weren't sure how the students were going to react, how students from their own respective campuses didn't really know each other that much before. So how were they going to interact with each other, same campuses, and how the 2 campuses were going to mesh. And it was incredible to see kind of the mixture of how fast everybody got along with each other, how people engaged with one another so quickly, and truly became friends. I think that you're still in contact with one another, which is truly amazing to see. And I think that speaks to the power of our university and the values that we hold, that we are fostering a culture among our students that allows them to connect in such an easy manner. Another amazing experience, I think, for me was our our third and fourth days there, our Wednesday and Thursday, when we worked at the St. James Food Pantry. So in Chicago, we used a lot of public transportation to get around. So that meant taking trains, that meant taking buses. We walked a lot as well. But on the trains and buses, and particularly the buses, we would go into these different neighborhoods that maybe weren't the highest end neighborhoods, probably served a lot of underserved populations as well. And so it was amazing to see on the days that we went to the food pantry that some of the people that we rode the bus with were the same clients that we worked with at the food pantry. And I found that, to me, was a very powerful experience to be like, I rode the bus with that person. Like, we're the same. It wasn't anything built on prejudice or anything like that. It was an experience of, this is somebody that's just looking for a little extra hand in life and a little something extra in need. And it was just a great and humbling experience to be like, no, we rode the bus together. This is a person to see almost, well, the sisters say the dear neighbor, right? That was our dear neighbor, and we got to experience that on a daily basis. So that was an amazing experience. And then I think finally my other incredible experience was on Thursday evening. We had a great time at the American Indian Cultural Center, and where we learned a great and powerful story about the issues that plague a lot of the American Indian tribes, and a lot of the issues that face. So the testimony by a gentleman's name is Ronnie, that he offered was truly just like heartfelt. He came from the heart, his testimony, and it just really impressed upon me just like kind of the struggles that this particular group of people goes through, and left me inspired to kind of want to work more with tribes that are local to us and kind of the issues that they face as well. But I would say overall, the whole trip was an incredible experience. There was no one experience that was like not powerful. I think every single person that we met across the trip, every single person that kind of was quote unquote our leader for that day really left a strong, an amazing impression upon all of us.
How did you see the students grow or transform over the course of the week?
Well, I remember one of the students, we were commuting on the bus from one site to another, and the student said to me, I haven't been that involved in St. Joseph's yet, but as a result of this service trip, my desire is to become more involved. And so that to me was like a turning point, in a sense that the experience at that point, we had been to the Mexican consulate and a few other things, but I don't know that I expected such an immediate sense of transformation in someone, or that this had so piqued this particular student's interest.
I think I saw that the students grew in their understanding of just like the care and concern for other people. I think that's where I saw the growth lie, was that you came in maybe not having worked with certain groups of persons, or maybe haven't really had a lot of exposure to persons who are disenfranchised, and to kind of see that growth and see that development of understanding of like why it's so important to reach out to the poor and most vulnerable, and to learn about different groups of people and understand also the issues that are going on in our country that a lot of different groups of people face every day. I think that showed a certain growth among the students participating. We went to the Mexican consulate, and we learned a lot of the issues that the Mexican immigrants are facing in our country today. And I think that's just something that we haven't necessarily been exposed to so much in our university communities. So it was great to kind of see all of us learn from that and kind of grow from that experience, and just talking with people and just learning more about that. Another great story I had too, it was on the day that we went to Old St. Patrick's Church in the Ukrainian National Museum. That was on Friday, I believe. And it was amazing to see some of our students talking to each other and teaching one another about the different experiences, because we come from different backgrounds and traditions, our group did. So it was great to kind of see everyone kind of talking to each other, asking questions. Oh, what does this mean? Or, oh, this has significance in your life. Tell me more about it. So I think it was a great way to not only learn about, each other, but just kind of the values that we kind of hold and share with one another.
How does this trip reflect the mission and values of St. Joseph's University, particularly the 5 pillars?
So as I said before, when we were looking at different trips in the planning process, one of the things that I wanted to do was certainly reflect the mission and identity of our university. That was at the core of like everything I was planning, was like, how can we reflect these pillars in the work that we do and stuff. And that's where I said St. Christopher Journeys and Michael Mayer, the values that he and his company have very much reflect the values of our university. So we focused a lot on, obviously, social responsibility and service. Obviously, we did work in a food pantry for a few days, so we gave back to community. We learned about the issues that different members of this community face on a daily basis and the struggles that they might have. We had that spiritual depth component too, which I thought was really wonderful, that we were able to go to Old St. Patrick's Church in the Mother Cabrini Shrine, and also have that reflection at the end of the evening too. I think that was a great way to kind of tie everything in together. And so it was just a great learning experience. It just was an all-encompassing experience that kind of just touched on every little high point of our mission. It really reflected our motto of Esse non videre, right? To be, not to seem. And I think our students who are participating on this trip certainly now better understand what the meaning of that motto is and live that motto now further in their lives.
Well, we talk in the pillars about social responsibility and social justice and spiritual depth. And I think the experience of the 6 days and the variety not only of experiences, but also of cultures, and hearing the stories of each person, whether it was the Ukrainian docent or the Native American who was teaching us bead making and sharing his story, or the gentleman who spoke to us, who himself was originally from Puerto Rico. The passion with which these people shared their stories with us and what we learned, I think really reflects the sense when we talk about the pillars of St. Joseph's, as well as the impact of the historical spirituality of the Sisters of St. Joseph, of inclusiveness, of hospitality, and also that sense of being the dear neighbor and seeing one another regardless of our religious background, our educational background, the language we speak, the color of our skin. That I think all of that was very much embodied in the experience of this trip and the people that we met. So I would say it was very well-rounded in that respect.
What do you hope students take away from experiences like this?
So I hope that students can just learn more about compassion. I think this was a trip of compassion in recognizing people for who they were as people, right? Not seeing them as other, but just learning that people come from different walks of life, people come from different situations. And for those who face difficult situations in their lives, it's about how can we be compassionate to them. And I think a trip like this, and hopefully further trips as well, will kind of speak to that necessity for compassion and love. Because a lot of times we live in a climate now in our country where there's a lack of compassion, where people who are impoverished, who are immigrants, are kind of seen as others, who are kind of pushed out to the sides of the margins, who are not welcomed here almost. So I think an experience like this certainly would help students and participants to understand that no, all people are welcome. All people are welcome here. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. It's about treating other people with dignity and respect and kindness and love and compassion. So I think these trips are super important for that.
I think one of the most important things for any of us, but certainly for students, unless we reach out and go out to one another, sit down and break bread with one another, share our stories. If we don't do that, we sort of then remain in isolation, and we allow sometimes stereotypes to take over, or everything is one story, and it's our story because it's our experience. So I think the importance of students, but again, of anyone, to sort of go outside of their comfort zone and to be willing to explore, whether it's other cities, other countries, other religions, that simple act of human-to-human contact and conversation can do so much to really have the scales fall from our eyes and see that we are all one common human community, and that we are all children of the same God. And I think if we do that, the world will certainly be a better place.
Why do you think service trips like this are important for college students?
I think we can learn so much in a university setting, right? We sit in a classroom day in, day out. We gain so much information, right? But there's only so much we can learn without doing. And this is an experience of so much about doing, getting your hands dirty, so to speak. We can learn in theory, oh yeah, help the poor, help the needy. But when you actually go out and do that, when you get to talk to people, this was a trip of encounter. We encountered so many different groups of people, and we had so many great conversations with those people and heard so many great and powerful testimonies. You can't get that sitting in a classroom. You can't get that through a textbook. You only get that without taking a risk, going outside of your comfort zone, and putting yourself out there and meeting those people. And I think that's what this trip did. It really kind of pushed us past those comfortable boundaries that we had to really engage with people who we would have probably turned an eye to otherwise. So it really was a humbling experience, and I think it's one that I want to encourage so many other people to participate in, hopefully in the future, because it truly is a transformative experience. And those, I'm sure, who are on this trip can certainly say that they left with this feeling changed, feeling transformed, feeling empowered to do more, not only during their time here at St. Joseph's, but in the future, working for the needs of others.
Well, I think trips like this, as I said earlier, provide a very different context. And in academic environments, we're often using our brains, and so everything is very cerebral. But when you go out on a service trip, you can't necessarily depend upon that. Being on a service trip really challenges your ability to encounter others in a relational way, as opposed to like some kind of problem to be solved. And so by removing students from that academic atmosphere, and I think too, it involves physical work. One of the projects, we spent 2 days at a parish food pantry, and a lot of that was physical work, but the rest of it was really all relational work, meeting people that none of us had ever met. There were language barriers, and yet we were able to bridge some of those language barriers. We received an education about the reality of food insecurity that sometimes in our own ivory towers we don't always experience.
If you could give one message to the students, not just of St. Joseph's University, but to students in general, what would it be?
I'm just going to go back to the heart. Just have compassion. Have compassion for your fellow students. Have compassion for the people around you. Have compassion for the people that you don't know, for the people, the others, so to speak, the people on the outside. Just have compassion, because we need a lot more compassion in this world. Sometimes it can be seen as scary. At times, people are uncertain. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of negativity. But when we live our lives with compassion, it's truly transformative. And that really speaks to the heart of the gospel message. We're mourning the loss of Pope Francis, and Pope Francis talked a lot about that, right? Compassion and reaching out to the margins. And so truly living in a legacy that reflects that and embraces that message. And that's not just particularly to Christianity too, but I think all traditions and backgrounds anybody can certainly respect and know that compassion is at the heart of living. So have compassion, that's what I would say.
There's a quote of Catherine of Siena and it says, "Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire." So I think what I would say to students is, do that search, get involved, and discern for yourself, like, what is your purpose in life? What is your call? Who do you believe you are called to be? And then be your authentic self. And by being your authentic self and sharing your gifts and your insights with others, you will be a force for good. You will set the world on fire. You will ignite sparks in others for them to also be their authentic selves. And what greater gift could any of us ask for but to be our authentic self?